All right, let's go ahead and design our social media graphic. This one shouldn't be too difficult. We're going to drag this rock texture down to the bottom and increase the size. So I'm holding the option button down so it increases in scale from the center of the image. Next, I'm going to take our man on the bridge photo. I'm going to scale that down like this. Again, it's still in the center of our frame. I might bump it up a little bit in just a minute. Next, I want to create that sort of corner graphic over here that are actually gradients. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. And there's lots of different ways you can do this. The easiest way is just to take a rectangle or a square like so. We're going to play with all of our different colors and everything later, but we're just going to rotate it and scale it until it's going the direction that we want. Something like so. Now let's play with the colors. We're going to turn off our stroke, selecting our stroke, turn that off. And for our fill, we're going to use a gradient. Now we can't really see what we're working on, so let's move it over there. We're going to start with some sort of blue, darker blue like this, and then go to a lighter blue. What I often like to do with our gradients is actually have this color be our starting point for our next gradient color. Now, I haven't really dived into colors that deeply, but this number right here is what you call a hex code, and it's the hex code for this specific color. So if I copy this and then I go to this next gradient point and paste it, it's going to pick that exact color that we chose. You'll also see that all of these numbers here are also filled out, and that's another way you can pick a color. If you know, for example, the specific RGB numbers are right here, RGB, then that's another way you can plug in those numbers and it will pick that color. But the hex code down here is probably the easiest. And then from here, I'm just going to increase, go something lighter like that. Now, in terms of the angle, I actually think that angle is good because it's going from this edge of the shape to this top edge of the shape. The scale, I might increase just a little bit. And I might actually make this top color a little bit brighter, something like that. So that's pretty cool. That's our top corner. Now we want to add another corner to the bottom right. So the easiest way to do that is just hold the Option key and click and drag this to the bottom right. And you can see actually as we drag it, there are these guides that are kind of helping us align it and also space it out so it's the same sort of spacing as this one up here. You kind of can see that it kind of locks it into place at that point so that the corners are exactly the right position. All right, so those are our corners. Next, what we're going to do is create that play button. So if I take my ellipse tool and create a perfect circle, holding down the shift button, you'll see what happens is that I've actually created a shape using the original shape settings for fill and stroke. To easily copy these settings from another shape to another, from one to another, is what you can literally do is right click the shape you want to copy from, go to copy shape attributes, and then on the shape you want to paste them to, just right click and choose paste shape attributes. And you see now we have this play button that has the gradient. And I think this looks good in terms of graphic design, doing something like this where you're matching the style. You might want to just switch it up and maybe rotate this 100 degrees or 90 degrees or 180 degrees, just so that it's a little bit different. And for the play button, I'm going to drop the opacity to like 75 just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I think for this one, I actually am going to add a stroke, just like a white stroke, super thin, something like so. And instead of my overall opacity at 75, I'm going to change the fill opacity to that. And our stroke is still going to be 100% opacity. And there we have it. That stands out a little bit more than what I had created before. Now let's create the rectangle for our play buttons. So to do that, we're going to use the polygon tool. We're going to change the sides to 3. We're just going to go ahead and turn off our stroke. The fill is going to be white, and I'm just going to create a triangle. Now, to get it to be perfectly aligned so that the left side is perpendicular, I'm holding the shift button down. And now what I'm going to do is use our line options to align the polygon to triangle to our ellipse. Selecting both of those with my move tool, I can horizontally and vertically align them. Now I realize I'm doing that to the canvas, so let's do to the selection. And let's do that same thing, which it actually looks the same because it's already, if it's aligning to the canvas center, then it's going to align to each other center. But this doesn't look just right, actually, because I realize that the center of our triangle is not exactly where we want it to be centered on the circle. So I'm going to scale this down, and just using my keyboard left and right arrows, I'm just going to move it over to the right just a little bit. And here's another option or example of where I'm going to link these layers, and that becomes our play button. Now I do want to align this to our canvas center vertically, or horizontally rather. So I'm going to do that. And let's just zoom out so we see our entire project. I am going to just bump up our picture there. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And that's looking pretty good. Now the last thing is to create that little rectangle border for our image right here. There's, again, a couple ways we can do it. We can create a stroke just for this image itself, but I'm going to do it with a shape. So taking our rounded rectangle tool, no stroke, fill, we'll change that in a second. We're going to create this shape. Now I realize that this is the edges are a little bit too round. So once you do this, you actually have this properties panel. If you don't see that, just go to Window, Properties, and this is sort of a live look at your shape settings. And you can see here that it has the 100 pixel corners. And if we change this to 25, it will change the pixel or the radius of our shape. The option up here only applies to whatever new shapes you create. So if you're trying to change the settings for the rounded corners of an existing shape, then you'll have to do that in this properties panel. So that's just another quick tip. So we already have the color settings for this triangle copied. So if we just right click on our rounded rectangle and choose paste shape attributes, it should paste them, which it does. And if we put this underneath our man on a bridge, and let's just go ahead and align these to each other. So selecting both of them, we're going to center them. And now I'm just going to take my rounded rectangle and make it a little bit smaller. I'm just holding the Option key down so it reduces the size from the center, so it still stays centered on this photo. I'm going to link these now, so if I move one of them, I move both of them. And the last thing though is the gradient isn't exactly what I want it to look, because these other layers or these other shapes are actually rotated. The gradient is at a diagonal. And so for our rounded rectangle, I am going to go to our gradient settings. A quick way to get to that is just double clicking in the shape layer right there. And we're just going to change the angle, something like so. And that looks pretty good. So here we have what I've just created compared to our original. Looks pretty good. I actually like the play button with the stroke, and it looks just a little bit better in my mind. I might just bump that triangle. Let's unlink this and then just bump that triangle over to the right just a little bit. Right there is pretty good. All right, so hopefully you learned a lot through this project. A couple new things like copying shape attributes to another, adjusting the rounded corners of a rectangle after the fact, playing with the fill and stroke opacity separately with our play button, and lots more. So hopefully you enjoyed this project. I can't wait to see what you've come up with. And as always, you are free to tag me on social media at Phil Ebner or at Video School Online. You can find our links at our websites, videoschoolonline.com, or a new one that I haven't really mentioned, photographyandfriends.com. If you're into photography, that's a good website to learn even more. Cheers and have a good day.